Who is Lilith? Welcome back to another episode of Wild Feminine Magic. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get into the video. Who is Lilith? Many women ask this question. Is she a goddess? Was Lilith once a queen? Is she a witch? Or worse, is she really a monster, a demoness, a succubus? Lilith is an ancient one. She is our Dark Primordial Mother, the great mother goddess who has been present with us since our ancestors dwelled in caves. She was the continuum of life and death that humans understood in those days. She brought life, animals and plants for food and sustenance, and she brought initiation through menstruation, sex, birth and motherhood, disease, degeneration, decay and death. In prehistoric times, she was wild and animistic. Her worshippers related to her through her primitive power and animal body. Her shamans and medicine women understood the ancient goddess's esoteric language, her powerful ability to heal through the spirit of plants and animals as well as the dark and light cycles of the year. With time, and with the slow dissolution of the pagan world and the rise of Christianity, her life-giving aspect continued to be worshipped, with her death-bringing aspect, metamorphosed from the great mother goddess into witch or monster. Life and death, in most European historic cultures, were no longer viewed as a continuum, worthy of equal veneration. As a result, the death-bringing aspect of the goddess became an object of fear and hatred to be conquered, slayed or forgotten. Birds and snakes were once an intrinsic part of the ancient goddesses and her heroines. Birds and snakes are related to the benevolent aspect of the prehistoric goddess. We see the owl goddess in her great night wisdom. Owls can see through veils of darkness to decipher the wisdom of the soul. They are nocturnal creatures of magic, mystery and prophecy. The bird of death, protectress of the dead, is an ancestress of both Isis and Lilith. Sumerian mythology points to goddesses who represented a continuum of the life force, birth, death, and rebirth. Sumerian Inanna was a goddess of love but also a powerful warrior goddess who destroyed her enemies. This was the bright, solar expression of the goddess, but she also had a lunar, dark side expressed through her sister Ereshkigal, who was queen of the underworld. In the descent of Inanna, we follow Inanna in her journey to the underworld. Many myths tell of a goddess taken down into the underworld, into the darkness where she is initiated into the mysteries. Powerful and willful, the heavenly queen decides that she will journey to the underworld, to visit her sister, who rules there. The myth teaches us of the life-death continuum and how an individual seeker descends to shed outer egoic layers, learn unconscious fears and illusions, transform the fears in the dark womb of alchemy and be integrated, renewed and transformed with newfound wisdom. Ereshkigal initiates Inanna into the mysteries of death. What is death but the changing of one form to another, transformation, a portal giving birth to the new, rebirth. Here we see the same role being played by Ereshkigal or Lilith as was played by the bird of death, protectress of the dead. In later teachings, the beastly dark queen of the underworld is forgotten entirely. While Inanna's name lives on as the bright goddess of the Mediterranean, also known as Aphrodite, Ishtar, Astarte, and Tanit, her darker side continues to devolve and degenerate into the beastly part of a woman that should be conquered and slayed. The story begins to change yet again. The Sumerian Lil was also depicted with wings. Her name refers to the screech owl. The Burni relief depicts a woman with bird feet flanked by owls and lions, holding the life-giving Ankh in her hands. Here we have the primitive bird goddess, a primal ancestress of Lilith, now stylized as half woman and half owl. Lilith has bird feet, probably owl or vulture feet, and she is accompanied by the owl. In reality, she is the owl as well. Lilith too, like the Egyptian goddess Isis, was the bird of destruction, the bird of death. In ancient Europe and parts of Asia, from at least ca. 6000 BCE to ca. 2000 BCE, society was goddess-centered. However, by 2000 BCE, there is evidence of great change. Male deities are now depicted in great abundance, major sites are heavily fortified. This change happened in the Sumerian civilization once known as Mesopotamia. In the Sumerian poem, the Hulapu tree, the Lil, the Anzu bird, and a snake make their home in Inanna's halapu tree, and the goddess Inanna, who wishes to make a throne and a bed from the tree, laments that the three will not leave. Finally, the hero Gilgamesh comes and smashes the snake, and the Anzu monster rather than goddess. This is the first time we begin to see the transmutation of Lilith as a bird goddess become a lesser being. During the rise of the patriarchy, dogmas, structures and laws were put in place to establish dominance and control. The New World religions had little to no tolerance for the Old World pagan traditions and suppressed many wisdom traditions and mystery schools. Feminine wisdom, earth medicine and indigenous worship was erased and the path of the dark goddess forbidden. Lilith became a figure to be feared and her stories were distorted and twisted so that her archetype would be reviled and humiliated. The great snake power and earth wisdom that she represented became an evil serpent in biblical tales, and the apple, which once symbolized the supreme wisdom of Venus and her light and dark cycles, became an object of temptation. In the telling of such tales, ancient feminine wisdom became illegal and over time was reduced to sexual objectification to serve patriarchal stories of control and domination. The great bird goddess becomes a flying witch. The great snake goddess becomes the evil serpent. At this point, Christianity is at its political and religious height in Europe and influences written literature. Through storytelling and folklore, the goddess is successfully subdued in an oral way that spreads like wildfire. Every aspect of sacred feminine symbology becomes distorted. The supreme wisdom of Venus embodied in the apple becomes a symbol for temptation, labeled as forbidden fruit. The astrological path of the planet Venus in the sky that becomes a pentagram is now offered as the mark of a witch. The Kundalini energy becomes the evil serpent. The wisdom of the sacred feminine is completely denied, and any advocates of the sacred feminine are tortured, hunted and killed for holding beliefs and loyalty around the sacred feminine, as witnessed by the witch burnings of Europe during medieval Europe. There is no doubt that Lilith has survived through the ages, and for the last 8,000 years, she has taken many forms. First as the Neolithic European goddess of life and death, and later distorted into a witch and monstrous goddess. She represents power. Powers over both life and death were natural to the prehistoric goddess, but her powers over death were feared by the new patriarchal peoples, and they were taught to dishonor the death aspects of the goddesses instead of worshipping them as totalities. The unified goddess became fragmented. Lilith returns to us in a time where we need her more than ever. She is the great equalizer. Having traveled her own mythical journey to the underworld and back, from veneration and awe to banishment and exile, she understands the sacred feminine wounds of betrayal, rejection and humiliation. She can guide us towards finding our inner healer, inner shaman, inner wild woman. Her story is hidden within our collective unconscious as a feminine template victimized by persecution, now being reborn into her own integrated power and wisdom. To liberate Lilith is to liberate the wild feminine that lives inside us all. Lilith represents freedom. Freedom from the roles we have played to survive during the Dark Ages, and as the Dark Ages come to a close, she opens the new door to initiation of our wild, liberated heart. That brings us to the end of today's video all about who is Lilith. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to leave a thumbs up and to subscribe to Wild Feminine Magic for even more fascinating content, just like this. As always, thanks for watching. See you again soon in the next one.